Hello and welcome to another AlienAnimations tutorial. Today we are going to be taking a look at how to create a very cool glowing effect, and this could be used for a lot of things. You could be in like a space scene, and you could have like the sun, and you could want it to look like it's like actually like glowing, like the real sun kind of does. It could be used for lights. It could be used for making cool reflections and glare from like metal stuff like that. So it's really cool, and I'm going to be kind of showing you how to do that today. So what you can do is just set up a really simple scene. I do here have a plane which will be acting as our light for today, and I have an area light here that is actually lighting up the scene, but that doesn't look like a very realistic light. You know, if you look at photos, it looks a lot different than that. So we're going to change that. Right now, if you go to your render panel and you open up layers, you're going to see that you have a default layer with the scene and then everything that you have here. Now we need to get this plane here onto a different layer so that when we're editing it, it doesn't edit these meshes as well. It just edits this one object here. So we're going to call this first scene here just scene, but you can of course call it whatever you like. Now this light here, we're going to add another scene. We're going to call this light. Awesome. So we're going to select both of them here, and you can hold shift and select these, by the way. So now we're seeing both things. And now in order to use this properly in the node editor, we need to render both out. But before we do that, this light here, we actually need to move it to a different layer over here. So with the light selected, we're going to push M, and then you can just click and put it whichever layer you like. So let's go ahead and render the scene first. So since we're only wanting to render everything without the light, let's click layer 1. Let's give it a render. Awesome. Okay. And actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to turn off this over here. Excuse me. All right. Now let's do that. Cool. And now we are going to go to the second layer, which is light. Select the second layer or whatever layer your light is on. And we're going to give that a render. Cool. Now you can see we have, oh, you know what, I did mess that up. We're going to have to turn off sky, pardon me, because we don't want to be making the sky glow as well. So turn off sky over here for both. Awesome. Okay, so now we're pretty much done with everything in the 3D viewport. Let's head on over to the node editor. I know there's a shortcut for that, but I just can't remember it. So click Use Nodes and make sure that we're over here in the composite folder, not the materials or the textures or whatever. And the node editor works basically by, these are all things that affect the image. This is the final product, and you connect them all and it squeezes into there. So as you can see here, we have our scene. Okay, and if this is the same in the 3D viewport, we can just Shift-D, that'll duplicate nodes, and we're going to push light for this one. As you can see, we have our plane there as our light. So we're not going to touch this one right now. What we're going to be focusing on is the light here, because that's what we're going to be editing. So the first thing to kind of make it look like it's actually like a light and it's giving off energy, we're going to go to Filter, and this is by pushing Shift-A, by the way, and we're going to go to Blur. This one is usually the best. And before we do that, we're just going to add a RGB color. So go to Color, RGB Curves, and then Shift-A once again. And we're going to put a viewer in Output so we can see what's going on. And down here, you can click Backdrop to have that on. Okay, so now we're all set up. You can see what this does here. If I turn this up, it basically makes it look brighter. And that obviously makes it look darker. So you can play around with this. And then you can, of course, do this with red, green, and blue, and then the actual intensity. So we'll just leave that. You can actually click reset, I think so, yeah, reset curve, and that puts it back if you realize that you goofed. So let's just put this at a value, each of the X and Y at 3, and this is just kind of going to stretch it. And then if we turn this up here, actually we can even put that a little bit bigger. Let's put that to maybe 4 and 4. Yeah, that's looking much better. So now we got kind of like the actual strong color of the light, and of course, if you can, of course, play around the color, you can make it a blue light on the rim, or you can make it like, you know, whatever you want. So I usually give it just a tint of blue when I'm doing like light bulbs and stuff, because it's kind of how it works with interior lighting, like fluorescent light. You kind of get that bluish hue or tint to some stuff. Mostly because I was doing a hospital level before when I was working on a game with a few of my buddies and had to do a lot of those fluorescent lights, so I'm pretty comfortable with this. So cool, we got the actual light down, and now the cool way to make it kind of have like that foggy glow around it, like it's kind of like hitting the air particles, is by doing this here. So go back, select this node here, we're going to push Shift A, filter, and this is glare node, okay? And this one looks a little bit complicated, but I assure you it's not that complicated at all. And we're just going to be doing the same process here, RGB curves, output, and viewer. So now we got the same setup as we do up here, except this is a glare node, not a blur node. So there are several, we're actually, excuse me, before we do that, let's turn the threshold all the way down. I don't know why that is, but if you can see here, we now have like a faint glowy thing going on, which is cool, but it's not strong enough. So that looks a little bit weird. You could possibly be doing that for maybe like car lights or something, where you actually have the streaks, but we don't want streaks. The one that I use for fluorescent lights is fog glow. Okay, and that makes it look like it just has a little bit of a glow around it. And of course you can play with the size on how big you want that, and you can turn it up to as bright as you want. I'm just going to put it kind of high just for the sake of the tutorial. And let's just put that at a small blue tint, because it just looks cool that way. Okay, so now we got this cool like glow. That's very strong. Let's turn that down a little bit. Can't complain. Alright, so now that we have our two things here, how are we going to mix these two together? And I do believe I actually just goofed that up. Wonderful. Let's fix that up there. There we go. Okay. So how are we going to fix this? How are we going to mix the two together? And don't forget, we do have to mix this as well. So to mix nodes together, you're going to push Shift A, color, and mix. And if you're wondering why it's in color, it's because you're like mixing colors. That's what I always thought it was. So that's why. So you take the yellow, plug it into the yellow, and you have your two, and that's wonderful. And because we're using lighting, you use screen, and that's going to just make it work for whatever. If you're doing lighting, if you're affecting colors, you can use add, or actually you can use any of these pretty much. Just use whatever one you think looks good for your scene. And now we're going to just Shift D this, turn this back to add. We're going to take our original scene, give that a plug in there, and mix that together there. And now I think if let's put a viewer here just so we can see the final result. And as you can kind of see, it's kind of like mixed the two together. And of course you can change these settings whenever you want if you're noticing that it's not light enough or too dark or whatever. You can of course just play with those. So yeah, if you're trying to work on fluorescent lighting, or if you're trying to use any type of making your lighting look a lot better, if you have a light object in your scene, this is a great way to do it, kind of playing around with these type of nodes. You can use color balance nodes, which I'm not going to show because it's not really involved in this tutorial. But that is a good setup that you can be using to have good fluorescent lighting. And of course, if we go back to our 3D viewport here, and I think everything's already all set up. Some people, I'm trying to find the button here that, yeah, some people say, oh, it's not working for me. Make sure that compositing is turned on so it'll actually run your compositing. And if we give it a render now, if you look up here, you can see it's actually compositing. You saw composite there, the actual nodes. Added that to your scene. So if your compositor is turned off in that post-processing panel, that's why you're not getting your effect. So I hope this was helpful for anybody that was doing interior scenes or like cool car renders or stuff like that. I should probably try one of those sometime. But I just want to say thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.